Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17. I'm doing a review of Underwater. This movie is directed by William Eubank and it stars Kristen Stewart, Vincent Castile, and T.J. Miller. Sorry if I butchered any of those names. Among many other actually pretty good actors and actresses in this movie. A standout would be Jessica Henwick, and also a nice vocal guest appearance by Gunnar Wright, who voiced Isaac Clarke in the Dead Space series, which, again, for a movie that supposedly is dumped in January, takes a lot from other movies and Easter eggs and puts them in this film, and I actually quite enjoyed that. But that being said, I do want to point out the fact that a lot of people are saying this movie is a ripoff of Alien, of the 1989 horror just tidal wave that came out during that time of so many different horror movies of underwater settings, to other films like the Cloverfield series, to even creature designs that are very similar to, again, other monsters of other franchises. But that being said, this movie does enough different that I actually really enjoyed it, and I never felt it was just copying for the sake of copying another franchise and never did anything unique or different. Yes, this is an underwater facility, but the way it breaks apart and goes down is unlike any movie from the 1989 movies, simply because of the fact that the effects that they have in this movie are really good. Example, Leviathan came out in 1989 and did some really good underwater sequences, even though it was, I believe, shot dry for wet. This movie does the same thing, but the CGI is actually so good in this movie that I never once did not believe that they were underwater. It got me invested. The characters as well got me invested in this movie. These characters are not bad. The script they're given is a little underwhelming, and I will be fully frank with that. I wish they added more to the story, but that being said, I never felt the story was undercooked in a sense of I would always wish there was something more. I never wish there was something less. I wouldn't take away from this movie, if that makes sense. This movie left me wanting more, which is something a movie should do. Kristen Stewart is great. Also, I have to give a shout out to Vincent Castile as the captain of this underwater facility, as well as Jessica Henwick, who does a fantastic job portraying a character that is dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of grief, a lot of turmoil, but still pushing through, showing that she has a fighting spirit, and I really enjoy that. A lot of other sci-fi movies would have characters that really wouldn't have much personality and much depth. This movie has some depth and actually a good amount of personality, so I really enjoyed that fact. I really enjoyed being invested in these characters. The setting is also will draw you in. It's very claustrophobic. It's intense. There's pieces of this facility literally creeping and closing in on you as these characters are trying to navigate it. There are sequences that I wish maybe were better involving the monster, but that being said, I wouldn't cut it. I would add more. I would want to know more about this facility. The setting just happens to be an underwater facility that, once again, a lot of movies from 1989 also did, and also a lot of other movies have referenced or done. The suits, yes, look like something that came from Alien. There's a sequence where they're all around a table, which is done in every single monster movie, but this movie felt more like Alien than Prometheus or Alien Covenant. Both films I would not recommend to anyone because they ask a bunch of big questions but aren't interesting, aren't entertaining, and while they're filled with great actors, aren't given anything for them to really do. These actors, most of them I don't know except for T.J. Miller, Kristen Stewart, and Jessica Henwick. And I know her from Daredevil, T.J. Miller from Deadpool, an example, and Kristen Stewart from Twilight. And for those who are calling her out for saying she's a bad actress because of Twilight, again, I have to thoroughly disagree. She was great in this movie. With the limited material she was given some great depth and had some great emotional reactions. They are literally in suits, and yet her reaction in those suits are really damn good. The CGI helps back that up. It makes you feel like she's underwater and she's always under threat along with the other cast members. Also, the score is something that is different. It is unique. Actually, I can remember it, which is something that I can't remember from, let's say, The Grudge. And again, there are negatives to this movie. There are some plot points and stuff from other movies that, if you go on a beat-by-beat basis, is another genre underwater horror film. But that being said, I never wanted to cut a scene from this movie. I always wanted to add a scene. And it feels like as well that the director was trying to work within his budget. And I think this movie's a budget of $50 million. And this movie looks great. It reminds me of something like Cloverfield, where Cloverfield, they used every single cent to really emphasize the locations, the CGI, the scenes and atmosphere of their sets. And I think this did an equally good job. I think that this makes it look like a big blockbuster movie, way better than it has any right to look. And there are sequences that are generally thrilling and interesting and unique. Now, that being said, there are plot holes, there are issues. The ending has more issues than the beginning by a wide margin. But that being said, I still really enjoyed this movie and would highly recommend it. It's sad it came out in January. It's sad the movie studio literally dropped this thing with really no marketing. I almost forgot this movie was supposed to come out until I was checking my list and a week before saw, oh, Underwater comes out. I should probably put that on the poll. And even though I missed it last week because I had to go see 1917, I will be damn sure if I do not talk about this movie because it is actually really good. Again, Kristen Stewart gives a performance that I think is really damn good. I think it needed one or two more things to be something on the scale of Ripley. I'm being honest, that's how much I liked her. Overall, if I had to give a rating, and again, take from me who loves monster movies, so again, score can change for you. But for me, this movie was a 7 out of 10. There's some pacing issues in the second half. I also think that in terms of some cutting that happens, I wish they added additional scenes. There are some moments that I wish they added some more depth to the characters. A few moments where they let the characters breathe. They do that, but then they keep on going at such a rapid pace that once again, it feels like they put all the money into the scenes they could and cut the scenes that would look bad. And there's not a scene in this movie I would say, well, that looked fake. It all looked really damn good, especially the sets. And there are a lot of good practical sets of them maneuvering through these hallways and these ruined portions of this underwater base. So again, I highly recommend this movie if you're a monster fan, an underwater fan, or a fan of just horror movies. That being said, this isn't a blood-curdling slaughter fest. There is blood and there are death scenes for sure that are terrifying in some ways, but that said, this movie isn't necessarily horrifying and scary. There's a few good jump moments and a few good scares, but overall it's not something horrifying or too terrifying for you, but it's definitely more terrifying than The Grudge. And honestly, it had some really good tension building, and that's the best thing about this movie. The tension it builds of them trying to get to their destination is probably the best achievement in this movie, and I have to give credit for that. So again, I do recommend Underwater, a 7 out of 10 on my scale, but what do you guys think? Leave it down in the comments down below. I will go into a brief spoiler mode, so if you do not want to listen, leave now. But spoiler mode is now initiated. Remember, 7 out of 10 is my score. Spoiler mode, spoiler. So, of course, the facility falls apart and Kristen Stewart meets up with... By the way, I do have to give a quick shout out to Malvado Athi. He's in this movie very short amount of time. And unfortunately, one trope is, unfortunately, the black character does die first. Unfortunately, this is followed by the comedic relief. So, there you go. Again, I don't know why people are complaining about TJ Miller because he's literally one of the first people to die, and he's out in the probably, I want to say within the first half of the movie, he's gone. So anyway, the point of the matter is there are a lot of sequences that feel like copied or like not copied, but inspired by other plot points. Like, for example, I mentioned that Gunnar Wright, the character from I mentioned Gunnar Wright, the voice actor from Dead Space in this, and there are a few moments where you feel like, oh, he got a plasma cutter. Okay. Again, interesting, unique take of using just welding tools and other just machine weaponry as weaponry in this underwater facility because they're not going to have shotguns and pistols. They'll have flare guns and they'll have machine tools to help with cutting and such. Another thing is the monster, which is this underwater humanoid-like thing that comes from an underground like cave, similar to like the Meg, that essentially come up, but it looks like the Dark One with Orga's face. So if you know what I'm talking about, the Dark One's body, but just have Orga's like opening mouth. They have a reverse chest burster scene in this movie from Kristen Stewart being eaten by one of these creatures, and she fires a flare gun through it and walks through it. Because again, these things are not, in terms of the strength, they're not that well put together. They're very flimsy and made out of a very light material, but they still pack a punch because they're literally swimming through high pressure. So as that. But they all are coming from, and this is why the Cloverfield reference, literally a giant monster which pulls out the drill and it climbs out of this underwater cavern / like hole in the ground to throw out the drill, break apart the base, and then literally at the end of the movie they're trying to get on these escape pods to get up, and what ends up happening is 2 of them go up. Kristen Stewart's left behind because there's not another one. She's fine with that. The 2 people that escaped are actually the love interests between each other. Once again, Jessica Henwick and John Gallagher Jr., who I believe was in 10 Cloverfield Lane, which again, funny enough. But they are going up, and once again, really good chemistry between the 2. Actually felt like, again, they cared for each other, which a lot of movies are like, okay, they're going to die. But no, it was actually thrilling and entertaining to watch them try to cover each other's backs. Also, moving on from that, going up, this literally being chased by an underwater, like, half anglerfish, half like Cthulhu, because it had like Cthulhu's beard and literally upper body, but the tail and the head reminded me, or the upper portion of the head and the teeth reminded me something of an anglerfish in terms of its body and design, with a lot of tentacles. But anyway, these humanoid things come out of its hands and out of its body, similar like parasitic organisms, which I'm assuming it kind of coincides with as like a fish. There's a few fish that kind of coincide with each other, that kind of have this unique harmony with each other. What, like, I forget the name of it, but essentially a fish that cleans one, and then on the flip side, while it cleans the fish and eats the dead stuff on it, the larger fish will protect it. That's what I kind of got from this synergy between the 2. But in any case, essentially they're going after the pods. She detonates the facility and destroys everything. The problem is, the facility she detonates, she literally just hits a few buttons on a keyboard and literally activates a nuke, essentially the generator in the facility. But again, even though that is stupid that she's able to do that, while watching it, I was entertained. I was like, okay, this makes sense in her story. This makes sense of how things are. Everything's always out of her control. She never can do anything without something happening. And in this movie, when she finally has a moment to do something she wants to save others, it made sense. Yes, of course, doing the key bad is dumb, but there's plenty of other dumb moments in movies. As long as you're invested in the character and the unique story, it's fine. Again, you can nitpick that, and that's why also I brought it down, is because of that point. There are moments that literally just cut to black, and it kind of feels like they maybe cut out like a 30-second scene. But that being said, I'm assuming they did that because they didn't want to put in bad CGI. Every shot in this movie looked, for the most part, really good. There's moments in this movie that are horrifying, with these little white dots of the creature's eyes staring at her, and you see more and more pop up. It's, again, really well done. And the whole sequence of this giant monster awakening as well actually had me entertained. I was like, okay, I did not expect a giant monster in this movie. I'm being 100% honest. I thought it was just going to be these humanoid things, which, again, I would have to say maybe a better unique design for them, and I wish you knew more about the creatures is my thing. I didn't want to say too much about that in the non-spoiler, but I do feel like you don't learn enough about these creatures to have a big impact. But in any case, let me know down in the comments down below what you think of the movie. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Vote on my Patreon poll for me to see a movie next week. Again, you guys pick what I see, so vote down on my Patreon. But otherwise, it's been Greyshot17, and I'll see all of you next time. Hello everyone, this is Greyshot. Before I go, I want to give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Josh, Milam, Joey G240, Just Thomas Plays, Spartycus, Rifle, JrChicklis, Pyroshark, Ollie, Ace, GTA, and Jakub Osweija. Thank you all for your incredible support. This has been Greyshot17 and his amazing patrons, and I'll see you all next time.